Clemson Tigers are slated to start spring practice this week. They'll be out there Wednesday, March 2nd for their first practice session. And they begin what is going to be an ongoing flood of some of the top programs in the country, some of the programs we break down the most, getting things going for spring practice. Clearly, Clemson begins with the hope that they are going to have a bounce back into the college football playoffs after being in the college football playoffs every single year from 2015 all the way to 2020. 2021 was the first time in 7 years that the Tigers did not make it into the college football playoff. They also saw their ACC championship streak broken as the Pitt Panthers emerged as the winners of the conference, and Wake Forest won the ACC's Atlantic Division. So we've got massive turnover here. On the assistant coaching staff, we say goodbye to Brent Venables, who goes to take the head coaching job at Oklahoma. We say goodbye to Tony Elliott, who goes to take the head coaching job at Virginia. Replacing them involves mostly a series of internal promotions and reshuffling, but we've got a lot of questions at the quarterback position. We've got questions, the offensive line, wide receivers. I feel like we mostly know what we're going to get on the defensive side of the ball from a player's perspective, though what life without Brent Venables is going to be fascinating to watch. So before we get into other bounce back teams that we're excited about keeping an eye on here in the offseason, I wanted to give Clemson a little bit of shine where I want to gauge what is your level of concern, not that Clemson will be able to return to the top of the ACC, but that Clemson has given up some ground against the other best teams in the country. What is your level of confidence that when Clemson is playing at the end of the season, they not only have a double-digit win season and a record that looks good, but that they have a quality of form where if they make the college football playoff, you would expect them to be competitive in a way that they were with Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence?
Well, those are two, I think, pretty different questions and interesting ones, Chip. So I would say confidence that they have a 10-win season. I think there's a pretty decent chance of it. Notre Dame is, I would say, the only game in which I could see them being a dog in. Their other road games are Georgia Tech, Boston College, Florida State, and Wake Forest. So they get La Tech, South Carolina, Miami, NC State, and Louisville all at Clemson. They return a lot, guys. I mean, they do lose Justin Ross, but other than that, pretty much everybody else of consequence is back at receiver and tight end. They return their top 6 snap guys on the offensive line. They return their top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Everybody who had more than 100 snaps last year, all 10 on the defensive line, I believe, are back. So that's probably a team that's going to beat people up along the lines of scrimmage, which is kind of crazy to say because Clemson's offensive line maybe hasn't been all that great in recent years, but it's hard to see them getting worse with all those guys back. My question really is going to be quarterback, receiver body type fit, like not having all the same type dudes. Please find a slot receiver, Clemson, and the secondary. Like that's the one spot where they lose a lot. Nolan Turner, Mario Goodrich, Andrew Booth were good players, and they have to replace those dudes.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like winning 10 games, I'm fairly confident it'll happen because they've done it for 11 straight seasons. And
right. There's this base level that most programs would be like, this is awesome. And I'm just expecting Clemson to waltz its way. Mm-hmm. And then the actual number of wins between 10-2 and 12-0 or 11-1 is very, very small. But that's why I wanted to include the quality of form and line them up, not just against the ACC, but against the best teams in the country, because Clemson's not going to do itself any favors, and it's not going to do the ACC any favors if it wins the league, but then doesn't look great, misses out on the college football playoff, or shows up to the college football playoff and gets blown out because it is just not still at that high level, best in the country type caliber.
Yeah, I think that along those lines, like Clemson clearly has plenty of question marks that we need to have answered, but I would still say they're probably the favorite in the ACC because when you look around the rest of the conference, Pitt's lost plenty too. Wake's losing stuff. Everybody's, North Carolina lost Sam Howell. Miami, maybe they're poised to take a step forward because, they've got the coaching change and they were playing a lot of younger players towards the end of the season. So maybe we see them take a step forward. But when you look around the rest of that conference, like maybe NC State steps up in that division, becomes a thorn in the side for this year. But there's really no obvious team where I'm looking at the ACC saying that's the real threat to Clemson. I feel like Clemson is probably going to win the conference. Whether they do it with few enough losses to reach the playoff, I'm not nearly as confident in. I would say that's probably 40-60.
So last year they had Georgia out of conference. I guess they replaced them with either Furman or Louisiana Tech. Like, take your pick. So it's a little bit easier, I'll say.
A little bit.
They're non-con, and then they have to travel to Notre Dame. They've done that before with DJ at quarterback. Lost the game, but still, like, we've seen they compete there. And then they have South Carolina, who in a down year, Clemson clearly down, still won that game 30-0, and DJ only had to throw for 99 yards. I'll say this, though. They feel like, as you know, we've all been like, when's the dominance going to end? I do think they're vulnerable. Like, but if you said, hey, who today are you going to pick to win the ACC? I'd be like Clemson. I think you'd be kind of foolish not to, or you'd be trying to just find a flyer. You know, you'd be making a case for somebody else. But the schedule's pretty light. The talent's there. But both coordinators, like Venables has been a staple there for a long time. Offensively, I think it actually might help them to see some new, like Brandon Streeter coming in. I think that actually could be a good thing. Who knows what the young quarterback Klubnik's going to look like? Maybe if DJ is still a problem, either because I think one of two things are either going to happen. DJ either figures it out, plays better, or they have a viable option to go to and a young quarterback that can come in and execute the system better. But I still think they're just going to have that physical advantage over almost every team. I mean, find me a team they don't have a better roster than on the schedule. So I think, you know, if you said 10 wins, you know, I'd take the over. It's 10.5, maybe think about an under, but I think 10's probably a safe bottom line, like floor for Clemson this season. And then it's like, all right, if DJ figures it out, the quarterback is figured out, he's good, then it becomes a potential, like, all right, they're right back in the playoff and maybe a contender.
Yeah, I could see them going 8-4. I could see them going 12-0.
8-4. 8-4.
Wow.
Sure. Yeah, like if they don't play, if they don't do a good job of replacing the coordinators, certainly, and maybe DJ doesn't take a step forward. There are teams on this schedule that could beat Clemson, right? Miami, if they click, could beat them. Louisville played them extremely tough last year. Remember, I think went down to the wire. They could beat them. NC State did beat them last year. They're probably not going to lose at Wake. They could be a straight out underdog at the Irish. So I could see 8-4 if things go poorly. Also, what do they have at backup quarterback? I mean, Hunter Johnson or Klubnik most likely, but
I thought the expectation is that Klubnik's going to push DJ this spring. The fact that he graduated early and he enrolled in January, all of it was done with the idea that, you know, whether it's iron sharpens iron or, you know, DJ is going to get pushed or motivated in a way, because it still does not make much sense to me. And I am not a quarterback evaluator, but it does not make much sense to me that even the small sample size that we got from DJ Uiagalelei against Notre Dame and Boston College, that we saw very little, almost none of that same quality and that same form throughout the 2021 season. And so I can only speculate that it is something that is beyond just in the physical abilities, which are obviously there for him.
I'm also going to watch what they do post spring, right? I've long admired Clemson's incredible hit rate with their recruiting. I mean, they really do a good job, but their guys turn out very often. However, they don't really oversign at all, and they have not used the transfer portal with the exception of Hunter Johnson, who is basically a GA essentially, but they didn't have a GA spot. So here, come be a coach on the roster. That is sort of putting a governor on your own program, and I think that is difficult to overcome as other programs have more efficient processes, right, to roster building. Clemson kind of kneecaps itself for no reason other than what Dabo will say, which is like, we want guys who are all about our culture. And it's difficult for me to sit here and say that doesn't work because in a down year, they won 10 games. But as others do take more transfers and sort of cull and refine their roster, it would not surprise me if this becomes a little bit more of a glaring difference.
I'm super excited to see Will Shipley again.
Yeah.
got banged up, but that dude is very much like the kind of all-purpose threat out of the backfield that is just a whole bunch of fun. I thought that when Clemson's offense finally found its feet, it was not with DJU in the passing game. It was really with the combination of Shipley and Kobe Pace, another freshman, and trying to figure out some interesting and creative ways to move the ball on the ground. They are replacing some interior offensive linemen, and like we mentioned, just because you're bringing back a bunch of offensive linemen doesn't necessarily inspire confidence if the offensive line was a big concern. But I think that, even without, do you think that for your body type look at the Clemson wide receiver room, if you've got, let's say, like Bo Collins, Dakari Collins, is Nagata back?
Yeah.
Nagata's back. Does that give you, is that all the same body type for you?
The shortest guy that returns who had at least 100 snaps at receiver is 6'3".
Yeah, I was gonna say everybody's like 6'5". It's
6'3", 6'3", 6'6", 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah. Let's get that little 5'11" guy who can get in there between the linebackers every once in a while.
What a good idea for a slot to transfer to Clemson. Hello, go get a slot transfer.
Well, that's what I'm sitting here. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm just doing the Will Shipley angle route right now, which is what it became. Was like you flex Will Shipley out to the slot, or you run him out of the backfield, and he gets to use that little 5'11" his playmaking ability after the catch. That almost became your option right there. So I'm very interested to any other thoughts before we open up this conversation to just bounce back teams in general in terms of what you're looking for and what you're thinking about for Clemson. Brian Brzee as the best player in all of college football.
I just hope he's healthy because I love I love watching him a lot. He's the most Aaron Donald-ish player in college right now, in my opinion.
Good ref. Do you believe that James Skalski was are you going to believe in all the quarterback of the defense, coach on the field?
Sure.
Well, I was gonna say that was one of my key losses. You lost the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and Skalski, who's in the middle of that defense. He was there forever.
Yeah.
Then I met then you see him in person, and you're like, man, he's you can replace that, right? And that shouldn't he's a great player, he's great for the culture in the locker room, all those things, leader. But I think they'll be all right.
You can replace the physical. Yeah, you can replace the physical embodiment of Skalski pretty easily. It's all the other stuff that might take a little adjustment period.
Yeah.
All right. Wanted to, because again, it does seem like there is an expectation that Clemson will be bouncing back, if nothing else, at least right back to the top of the ACC with a chance to not win its division in a way it did not, win its conference in a way it did not, and contend for a college football playoff spot in a way that with a 9-3 regular season record, the Tigers were just not going to do so.